Good afternoon. I am Vice Chair Reva Chambliss. It's time to begin this meeting of the Committee of the Whole. It is Wednesday, May 13th, 2023, and I call this meeting to order. Are there any changes on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. The first order of business is approval of the minutes from the April 19th meeting. Committee of the Whole, can I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Unanimously moved and seconded by Councilmember Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay, this motion is adopted. Next, we have information. One of the information items in this meeting is the Q1 Metro Transit Police Department Safety and Security Action Plan updates. I'd like to welcome Lesley Kandaras, Interim General Manager of Metro Transit, to begin the presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Chambliss, council members. I'm also joined by Chief Morales. This is his first presentation to the Committee of the Whole, and we're excited to receive an update from him. As Chair Chambliss said, my name is Lesley Kandaras. I'm currently serving as the Interim General Manager for Metro Transit, and we're thankful that you're having us today to provide this quarter's update. Before we jump into our presentation, we actually want to share a brand new video with you. Our marketing department just finished this yesterday, so it's hot off the presses or hot off the reels, wherever videos come from. But if Greg, you want to play this, we'll start with the video.
When our Safety and Security Action Plan was introduced last year, we knew change would not come easily. We also knew we needed to come together, act with urgency, and do more to share our challenges and our successes. We are listening to your concerns. Nearly every one of the actions in our Safety and Security Action Plan has moved forward since the plan was introduced in 2022. To improve conditions, we've hired more cleaners and will soon bring supplemental security officers to some of our busiest locations. We are investing in our facilities and planning long-term changes that will make them more inviting. We're also working with partners who can connect people to services, and we are doing more than ever to recruit and retain police officers and community service officers, so we can have a stronger official presence on transit. We know we have a long way to go, but we'll continue doing all we can to keep things moving in the right direction, so you can ride with us in comfort and confidence. For more information about our continuing efforts to create a cleaner, safer, and more welcoming system, visit metrotransit.org/public-safety.
Very nice. I like it.
Well, and initially we were going to share this video at the end of our presentation. We're going to talk more about communications towards the end. But when we were reviewing it yesterday, we thought it would be a good way to set the tone for today. And really this quarter, we've been thinking about the fact we're facing two sets of challenges. The first set of challenges are those conditions on the system, the behavior that's leading our customers and our employees to feel unsafe, the smoking, the drinking, the other violations of the code of conduct. And we've been really focused on those. But the second challenge we have is really communicating and building trust of our employees, our customers, our communities, that we are on this, that we are taking action and we're doing so with urgency. And so this video is just one more tool that we're hoping to use to not just do our work, but show that we're doing our work, and we're doing so with a sense of urgency. So we'll, again, talk a little bit more about communications later today. But just to give you a sense of what we're going to cover, I'm going to provide just a brief overview of the Safety and Security Action Plan. It'll be a review for most of you, but this is the first quarterly update we've had since new council members have joined the council. So we want to make sure to set the context for today. Then we'll hear from Chief Morales, and for those of you who have been through these quarterly reports before, you know we've been pairing our quarterly update on the action plan with a quarterly update from the police chief. Part of what we heard from the police work group that met was it's really important for council members to have multiple opportunities to hear directly from the police department. So these quarterly updates are just one way that we're trying to make sure that happens. And then after the chief's presentation, we'll invite some additional staff up here to talk about some of the upcoming work you'll see, especially the supplemental security implementation, as well as some engagement and communications efforts. So again, I know this slide's a bit of a repeat for most of you, but just to kind of step back and talk about where the Safety and Security Action Plan came from. Back in June of 2020, shortly after the murder of George Floyd, Chair Lesley called on the council to conduct a police review. And that started a process where the Citizens League came in, the Twin Cities Innovation Alliance, and they spent about a year doing deep community engagement, ended up talking to over 1,000 people to really understand what makes people feel safe and comfortable in riding transit. And part of what we heard from that is it's a lot bigger than policing alone. Conditions on the system, how well lighted a facility is, how clean it is, how well maintained it is, how reliable our transit service is. All of these are pieces that lead people to feel comfortable and safe when riding. And so kind of taking in all of that feedback, the second phase of this work was the police work group, which was comprised of council members, chaired by Councilmember Chambliss. And the police work group really took in the Citizens League's work, supplemented it, synthesized it, and provided a vision for public safety on transit. And part of the next step from that was really charging Metro Transit staff to take that vision and operationalize it. So that really led to this third step, which was developing the Safety Security Action Plan. At Metro Transit, this wasn't the start of the work we had done. We had made many investments in increasing presence, increasing technology, really trying to improve conditions on our system and the sense of safety on our system. But through the action plan, we brought together a cross-functional group of staff, operations, police department, engineering facilities, as well as marketing, equity, other departments, all together to take a look at what are we doing now that already helps achieve the vision that the work group set forward, and where are there gaps, where do we need to do more? So from that came the action plan. It's organized into the 3 areas of work: improving conditions on the system, training and supporting employees, engaging customers and partners. And together there are 40 action items that, again, are a mix of things we had been doing that we are committing to continuing doing, as well as some new work. Improving conditions on the system refers to actions such as increasing presence on the system. Since the action plan was adopted, the council has increased wages for police officers, CSOs. We're looking at additional ways we can increase non-sworn presence on the system. The supplemental security contract that was approved by the council in March fits into this. Improving conditions on the system is also about improving our facilities, including public art at facilities, to create more of a sense of community ownership over areas and deter graffiti, using technology in more optimal ways. The second area of work, training and supporting our employees. When we developed the action plan, we spent time going up to all of our frontline facilities, our bus garages, where public facilities workers work, to talk to them about the issues they were seeing and what they thought would be useful. And so from that, we learned it's really important that our employees have resiliency training. We are taking a fresh look at our peer support program and really making sure that people who are really contending with some of the challenges in our region as it relates to poverty, homelessness, untreated mental health issues, and so forth, have the tools and experience they need. And then the final area is engaging customers and partners, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we're thinking about bringing supplemental security on. But really recognizing that we can't do this work alone, and in some ways, this area of work includes the contracts we enter into with community-based organizations to connect people to services, but certainly this area of work is recognizing that the issues we're trying to address will require a lot of partnerships to get at the root causes of them. So before I get to this quarter's update, I'll just mention that when the council endorsed this plan last June, Part of that action was to require us to come quarterly and provide you an update. In addition to what we're providing today, there's a much longer report, over 30 pages, that was posted along with this that goes action by action step to give you a more in-depth look at each where each one stands. And we're making all of that available on our website, the /public safety. So before I turn it over to the chief, this is just a high-level snapshot of each of the action items, work status essentially. We basically assign a status rating to each item, somewhat of a qualitative approach, but it's just to give us kind of a sense of are things moving forward. So compared to last time we were back here in January, I think January 18th, to talk about Q4 of 2022. Since last time, we now have 0 items that are in the not started category, so all 40 items are at least in planning or further along. We've also moved many more items to the implementation and progress stage, so again, kind of moving things out of just the planning to the doing. So together, the vast majority of our work is either implemented and ongoing or implementation in progress. But certainly some of it is work we're still getting going as well. So again, we have a full report that goes item by item, lets you know how they're coded. And certainly when we get to the end, if you want to talk more about items we aren't covering, we'd be happy to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the chief for the MTPD part of the presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. If I may, before I begin, I just would like to acknowledge the presence of members of the Metro Transit Police Department. They're here to support me. And then go into a brief introduction of who I am. My name's Chief Ernest III. I'm a 32-year law enforcement professional. My first 30 years were served with the New York City Police Department. As a member of the NYPD, I was privileged to serve as the commanding officer of Transit Bureau District 12. Here, my responsibilities included the personnel of 180 police officers, where we provided for the safe commute of 500,000 passengers on a daily basis, which contributed to a reduction of crime of 7.8%. My next assignment was as the first Deputy Police Commissioner in the city of Mount Vernon, New York, where I contributed to a 30% reduction in crime, and most importantly, the establishment of a cold case homicide unit, solving 5 of those investigations and bringing peace and closure to the families of those victims. My objectives. While I'm here, I'm continuing to observe and familiarize myself with the system, identify the issues, and devise a solution to those problems. However, keeping in mind that we are a major transportation system, one of my areas of concern are threats to our critical infrastructure. Due to the challenges that the counties and cities face, we have become an unofficial homeless shelter. We have a soft security posture due to our open system, due to the fact that we are flooded by chemically dependent individuals and the homeless population. This leads me to concerns of the potential for a domestic attack or a lone wolf factor. Potential targets would include the airport, which are the eyes and gateway to Minnesota. I never want tourists or visitors to be exposed to the false illusion of the issues we are experiencing at the moment as a representation of our beautiful state. We also have the Mall of America, US Bank Stadium, and Target Field. To be clear, there is no actionable intelligence suggesting an attack is imminent on our system. However, with this possible threat and day-to-day violations of our code of conduct, there is room for much improvement. We will never criminalize homelessness or individuals suffering from chemical dependency. However, we will enforce the Metro Transit Code of Conduct by strengthening our security posture and getting back to the basics. We will keep officers engaged by getting them out of their cars and back on the system. We will do this with fair compliance, directed patrols at specific locations, and end-of-the-line inspections, where we will have our officers sweep the trains with our canine detection dogs, removing all passengers, having facilities clean the trains, and then posting our personnel at fare stations. We've been conducting extended patrols at transit facilities. I've recently updated the reporting system in CompStat. CompStat's computer statistics that makes this a live report where we revolve on a weekly basis. That weekly basis grows into a 28-day period, follows on to yearly statistics, so that our statistics are live and continuously reporting. I've recently reassigned watch commanders to return to our patrol divisions. We have 2 tours. We have an A side and a B side. With that in said, we have 2 lieutenants who constantly monitor our sergeants and police officers within the field so they can directly and appropriately deploy them to where they're needed. We have a real-time information crime center that has, for the quarter, documented 1,800 hours of video surveillance. But more importantly, we've recently changed their hours of coverage. So they are now covering 7 days a week from the hours of 0600 to 0230 in the morning. And we've developed a comprehensive and long-term patrol plan, which is continuously being developed. Police calls for service. This is a snapshot of March 2017 to March 2023. What you see here is citizen and officer calls for service. Orange is citizens, followed by the officers in blue. What the orange calls are significantly represent is the top calls for service, which are welfare checks, medical, narcotics, prohibited acts, and disorderly conduct. Our focus is our presence to clean out the trains and to create a normal course of business, where we take our system back from our non-customers so they understand the new normal. Transit is designed to keep people moving. Once we have these standards in place, we can then team with ambassadors for additional presence on our system. Categories with the largest increase for our officers in blue are on boards, directed patrols, and prohibited acts. Group A crimes. These are simple assaults, destruction of damage, and vandalism to property, followed by an uptick in the light blue, which is other. For the first quarter, MTPD saw an increase in other Group A crimes. However, this is a result of proactive policing addressing issues such as drugs and drug equipment, as well as fare evasions. Enforcement totals which fuel Group A crimes are drugs, paraphernalia, ATM fraud, fare evasion, identity theft, impersonation, and counterfeiting or forgery. For January, 123 out of our 384 calls, or 32%, contributed to proactive policing. In February, this was 220 out of the 450 calls, or 49%. In March, it was 286 out of the 543 calls, or 53%, which was contributed to proactive policing. In the past, I think that these numbers were miscommunicated. We were getting penalized for proactive police work instead of getting credit for the officers being out there doing the job. Top 3 categories in A crimes by month are, as you see, there's a change. This slide represents that simple assaults fell off to category number 4. However, leading the crime categories were destruction of property and vandalism, followed by drug equipment and drugs. For January, that was destruction of property was 107 incidences. In February, it was 93, followed by March, which was 113. Drug equipment was January was 64, February was 96, March was 131. Drugs, 46 incidences, February was 78, March was 105. And simple assaults, which is category number 4, was January 58, February 42, followed by March 41. Code of conduct violations per month. A snapshot of September 2020 to March 2023 is other: intimidation, curfew, loitering and vagrancy, disorderly conduct, family offenses, transit interference with operators of vehicles, our bus operators and train operators, as well as the consumption of food and beverages. But the dark blue signifies the problem that we're all aware of: the alcohol, tobacco, and narcotics use within our system. This slide is a snapshot of fare checks on the Metro lines from 2017 to March 2023. You can see we have an increase on the green line, the blue line, and a reduction in the North Star. As far as the North Star, we have a member of the service who's currently out on military leave, so we haven't replaced as of now. But we are seeing fare checks moving up and ticking up on the green lines and the blue lines. And we're going to continue that trend based on my deployment patterns. Response times. The graph on the left shows trends from January 1st, 2018 to March 31st, 2023. This is a historical representation of our timeline. On the right, you see our actual response times, which are commendable based on the fact that we cover, as you know, 8 counties, 85 cities, 3,000 square miles. Their response time, amazingly, with the lack of resources that we have, remains under 8 minutes. Most of our calls are calls for service, priority calls within downtown Minneapolis and the St. Paul area. Our staffing issues. We continue to struggle with staffing issues. We are currently 61 officers short from our rated 171 full-time sworn officers positions. Another area where we continue to struggle is the recruitment of the CSO program. However, I can tell you that we had 3-day, 1-day hiring workshops this last week, where we've currently put 23 officers into background and 6 CSOs into background as well. More importantly, out of those 23 officers that have been sent to background, 3 of them are lateral officers, which means they will not have to attend a full academy. Once we get them on and trained, they will get into the field immediately. We've established a recruitment team of 2 full-time sergeants. We have our officer lateral recruitment program, which is what I just described to you, and our community service officer tuition reimbursement program, which is $18,000 of tuition reimbursement for any individuals that are looking for a police career in law enforcement. We're exploring a cadet program as well. These are people who have degrees, who have a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree, but didn't necessarily get into the law enforcement community. And we're looking to streamline them into the pipeline so that they can take the required law enforcement courses and then become qualified to become a police officer, a licensed police officer in the state of Minnesota. The Great Workplace Project recommendations. We've established this committee where we look at improving the welfare of police officers. We have 5 categories that we're focusing on, and that's the improvement of employee engagement. Every officer has a voice, and they should be heard for their ideas so that they feel welcomed and valued. The increase in mental health support. I think it's often forgotten that there's a human that's behind this uniform, and we need to support our officers in the struggles that they suffer based on the experiences they experience on a daily basis. Establish plans that create a shared vision. Everyone's voice matters, and we can't do this alone. So we have to collaborate and come together to share our ideas on how we can improve the system. Prevent and address racial discrimination. We all bring our unique backgrounds to the job, and we have to acknowledge our differences, but appreciate the ideas that we bring to the table. And prioritize recruitment, training, and mentorship. What have we done to acknowledge this? Recognition ceremonies. We've acknowledged the women that are an important part of our institutions. We've acknowledged the celebration of a recent FBI National Academy graduate, Lieutenant Salah Ahmed. 1% of law enforcement members are privileged to attend this academy. I was so lucky back in 2003 in the session of 2014. Down here on the left, lower left, we acknowledge one of our civilians who celebrated her 25th anniversary with Metro Transit, and that's a great accomplishment. And then in the far right corner, Minnesota Wild. Minnesota Wild, that's Officer Richard Gizzi, who's acknowledged for his participation and leadership within the Metro Transit Police Department. So we also welcomed 14 new staff members for the first quarter, and that was 9 police officers, 3 CSOs, and 2 administrative personnel. Career enrichment. We have 1,700 hours of training in the first quarter, which contributed to career enrichment, as well as what I just spoke about, Lieutenant Salah Ahmed, who just returned, and a career track planning on the way. What this is a tool utilized for retention. We want to give the officers a clear path of a career direction before they get to sergeants. So these are all the opportunities that we offer in the Metro Transit Police Department so that they have a career track and they understand the direction we're going so that we can retain them. Collaborative policing. We have contracted with our community partners such as A Mother's Love. We're currently organizing with Radius, which will provide social services. We have outreach events where we've conducted more than several events at the Mall of America, reaching out, having outreaches for members of our community on the trains, the homeless population, chemically dependent individuals who may need services, and we've offered them collaborations with the Homeless Action Team. The Homeless Action Team has been very lucrative, and in doing this, not only at the Mall of America, but the Brooklyn Center Transit Center as well. We have garage liaisons, where a sergeant assigned as a liaison to each one of these facilities. I'm going to follow up by doing a tour and making sure that these relationships are established and they are meaningful to the bus operators and train operators. We also have joint powers agreements. We currently have a working one where with our airport partners, the airport PD, we have a working mutual aid agreement. We just recently signed a contract overtime agreement with Bloomington, and we continue to work on our joint powers agreement. I'm happy to say that we've already implemented our contract overtime with Bloomington, and they were on our lines from the Mall of America to airport yesterday so that we could get more onboard experience and visual aids out there for the passengers that are utilizing it so that they feel safe. We also have our community engagement team and community affairs tracking our activities. As I stated, the long-term approach is for the outreach and for our homeless action team services. We recently removed an encampment by North 28 in Hiawatha. So we understand that this continues to be a challenge for us, but we want to work collaboratively with our partners to come up with long-term pragmatic solutions. Before I continue, are there any questions at this moment?
Any questions? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Morales and Lesley kind of know a few of the questions, so I sent them in advance because I think that it's nice for them to know some of the questions they're going to get. So first of all, thank you for this. This is really excellent. I appreciate that you walked us through everything. Just quickly before I give you the questions that I've already sent to you, could you just explain to everybody what a simple assault is, just examples of that in case people don't know?
Yes, so simple assault in the state of Minnesota is basically if you feel intimidated by my presence, I'm in your personal space and you feel intimidated by me, you can actually document a report, and that's simple assault. If I happen to spit you in the face, harass you, push you, these are simple assaults category. They get categorized as simple assaults.
And Madam Chair, where do the more serious personal crimes lie? What category do they fall in? We've had some serious attacks and more tragic than that. So where do they show up in the numbers?
Chair, member, council member, I'm sorry, I apologize for that. So we have had serious crimes that have been taking place lately. When you talk about serious assaults, assault 2, level 2, we've had several shootings and stabbings recently. However, I can say with our real-time intelligence crime center, we're able to immediately track those perpetrators and make immediate arrests. So we have made immediate arrests in regards to that. We've had a recent 2 shootings in I-35 where we identified the individuals. We were able to make 1 arrest. We have leads. We have promising leads on the continuing investigation. I don't want to reveal too much with that. The following day, we had a follow-up shooting at the location as well, but that individual was immediately arrested. However, what I will say for this committee and for the members who are watching publicly, that individual was recently arrested by our members prior to this incident. So we are experiencing repeat offenders that are constantly being released back into the population where they are continuously wreaking havoc within our system. We know who these individuals are, we deal with them on a regular basis, and they continuously get re-released back into the population, return back to our locations, and continuously commit crimes, which continuously get worse in magnitude.
And Madam Chair, if I may, that leads right into the some of the questions that I had for you in my email. And my question is, do we have the stats on the arrests that we make of the number of people charged for the various crimes who are sent to the county attorneys based on the jurisdiction, of course, for prosecution? I'm somebody who believes those numbers matter too to what we're doing. And even though we have to rely on courts, and we have to rely on the county attorneys to decide to prosecute, or whoever the jurisdiction is, the prosecuting authority, and anybody who's listened to police officers over the years, and I certainly have as a mayor, it's the repeat offenders that really, after a while, burn out our officers, because now it's digital paperwork that's not done by the time they see them back at their places where they're doing business. So I'd like to know some of the numbers on who actually is sent to into the justice system to be prosecuted. How many of those are just declined and sent back, and how many actually get into the system? And this is bigger than the police department, right? But I'd also like to know then, once they're in the justice system and they get before a judge, again, what does that sentencing look like, and how soon back are they on the streets? I also want to know if we track the arrests of individuals who aren't prosecuted versus being put into the justice system, because again, I'm sure our officers, just like all of the officers and our sheriffs, know these people pretty well, and they continue to prey on the good folks who are riding our system. I think that things like this are important for us as policymakers to know, because we can assert some pressure on these other units of government. I was at the Northwest Hennepin League of Municipalities meeting last month, and we had the new Hennepin County Sheriff out, DeWanna Witt, who is fantastic, by the way. High praise for our team here too, so that was really nice to hear. But they're all really struggling with these problems. So it's not just our system here, it's everywhere where there are these huge nodes of crime. So I think that's important. I just want to say too that I agree wholeheartedly that the people who are the victims of crime should not be criminalized. They need help. And that's where we need our other partners, and we've got some contracts here that we're working, but this is where we need our county system to step up and help in the social services world that they take care of. I mean, that's not our job here at Metro Transit Police Department, and it's very critical that they understand what we need from them in services. And so that requires Hennepin, Ramsey, and Anoka, name them all wherever it's taking place. It can't be just assumed and sometimes the media gets it this way too, are you gonna fix the crime problem on trains? Well, that should be asked to everybody in the whole region, because it's a societal problem, and we've got a epidemic, and I would say pandemic, of fentanyl drug abuse, and it's only a matter of time. These people that are addicted, it's a death sentence for them. They need the help, and the criminals who are on the platforms, near our bus stops. I mean, this is an underground economic venture that is taking place, and especially for younger criminals who kind of get put into the system and booted right back out because maybe they're under the age of 25, and one county attorney has opined on that age group. It really empowers the older gang leaders to, this is just standard operating procedure for the work that they're doing. They know that people are coming and going, and yes, there are some disruptions to what they're doing, but I think to your point, Chief, I didn't even think about the larger safety measures that need to be taken when it comes to Mall of America, US Bank Stadium, those types of assets. If we were having this discussion today after 9/11, we would be talking very differently about how our trains operate. But 20 years later, we've got some other new challenges. So for me, I think numbers matter, and it also gives the bigger picture of our police officers are doing great work. And it's an uphill battle right now, but this will continue on. We might eat around at the edges. I have full faith in you and the officers here and everybody here at Metro Transit in the work that they're doing, but until we can really have the bigger conversation, it's happening all over this country. So that has to be part of this conversation, or we're working in a silo. And then I would also like to know at some point how I believe we have investigators here. And I'd like to understand, their work, because they're the ones that are really digging into some of the deeper facets of what's taking place. And, they're the ones packaging things up too, and I'm assuming sending them off for prosecution. So having been a mayor, I would get reports on that side of it too, so that we would understand that relationship with the courts, the judges, the prosecutors, and what have you. So I think, it's a lot of work, but if there's somebody out there that's gathering those stats, I think it would be helpful for us, because the work you're doing here is commendable. The only thing I would say about the graphs, when you started putting actual numbers down, that was also helpful, like percentages and numbers. I really think for us that could be helpful too. That's just because we need simple things put before us sometimes to really understand where you're going with things. So I'm putting that out there because I think at the end of the day, if we don't continue to send the message that this is not just a police issue alone, we're just going to continue on a merry-go-round. And I think it then becomes very difficult as we continue to have pressure to add new lines. How do we staff up for things that are coming at us in rapid succession right now? So I just want to thank Lesley and the chief and everybody here tonight who's, all of us have a piece of this, and I really thought you did a great presentation. So those are the things I think we should be getting in addition to what is being presented tonight.
Thank you, Judy, for those very in-depth questions. Obviously, this is an issue for many people, and I like the quarterly updates. If we need more updates than that, more frequent than that, I think that is appropriate as well. Next, I have council member, why am I blanking out here? Peter.
This guy right here. Thanks. First of all, yeah, great presentation. I don't know if you know this, but you have a really thick Minnesota accent. It's impressive. I wanted to kind of hone in on the staffing comments that you made. So first of all, great news about the recent almost hires or soon to be hires, 23 officers, 6 CSOs. I think it was back in January when interim Chief Grates said that we've had a challenge with people that were in the background stage being picked off by other departments, and that we made a change that now it's like a 1 day or a much shorter condensed background check. I'm wondering if that is, if my notes are true on that, case, number one. And then number two, shifting to hopefully the ambassador program, and I'm hoping that the legislature comes through on that score. Thinking about how we have authorized 70 or so CSOs, and we now have 13, roughly. And with ambassadors, we will have, I think if I recall correctly, it's like 60, something like that, ambassadors. How are we gonna find 60 people? I mean, it's great to have that target, but are we gonna have 5 ambassadors? And then also, will those folks be employees of Metro Transit, or will we look to a company to fill those positions? I know with Minneapolis downtown ambassador program, I believe they hire a company to do that on their behalf. And I know there are several companies across the nation that they do this type of work for transit agencies, for downtown improvement districts, etc. So will we go the company route, or will they be Metro Transit employees?
Thank you.
Several questions.
Councilmember,
Chair?
Yes.
Councilmember, let me answer the first 2 questions, and then I'll turn it over to our interim manager,
Thank you.
Lesley Kandaras. First 2 questions. In regards to our one-day recruitment, yes, Captain Grace was absolutely correct. We had a system in place where it took several interviews for officers to come and get into the background area. The issue with that is we're all short officers within the state of Minnesota. We're robbing Peter to pay Paul. As the post is set up right now, officers can lateral over to another police department. And to be quite frank and honest, they're chasing the money. As other agencies raise up their salaries, officers are leaving departments and they're following the money. So with that said, we decided to implement a one-day recruiting process where you would go through stages, 3 stages to be exact, all condensed in 1 day. We just recently did this for 3 days last week. It was highly successful, where we were able to send 23 potential candidates to background investigations with the 6 CSOs, as you mentioned. In regards to our safety and security action plan, to question your ambassadors, yes, I think that the ambassadors, and I'm going to turn it over to interim manager, general manager, Lesley, so that she can follow up with this. But I will say this, as part of the safety and security action plan, I believe that it's our objective to get everybody within the system in Metro Transit, every employee, back engaged so that every member of our team is an ambassador, besides the follow-up to the ambassador program that we're looking to implement. And I'll have the interim manager, general manager take over, please.
Chair, Councilmember Lindstrom, yeah, just to expand on what the chief said about the ambassador program, or just in general, this idea that we want to create a new set of personnel that are not law enforcement. I'm trying to condense this story in my head because this is something we've been working on. This is the 5th legislative session that we've brought forward administrative citations legislation, which is tightly connected with this idea of creating a new set of staff who are not law enforcement but are providing extra presence and eyes and ears on the system. And in our model, we would like them to be able to do routine fare inspection, and that's the piece we've been seeking the legislative change to achieve. Just for context, right now in state law, it's a misdemeanor if you ride transit without paying. As a result, we have officers do fare inspection because they're able to write citations. So what we've been trying to do for many years is move to a model where we can create personnel that are not sworn, that can do that really routine duty of checking fares, educating customers about fares, ensuring fare compliance, in the hope that it actually then allows our police department to really focus on serious public safety needs. So that's the vision we've been pursuing with the administrative citations legislation since 2019. And I think this session, I don't want to jinx it, but certainly it's still in the mix of what's under consideration. And over the last few years, how we would staff that has kind of evolved too. So I think back in 2021, we added 50 part-time CSO positions to the police department budget. So as you noted, right now there's 70 part-time positions in the budget. That was on top of the 20 that had been in the police department budget for some time. CSOs, as you may know, need to be enrolled in school and in a law enforcement path. And I think, you know, as the chief has talked about, there's just a general challenge in the field of law enforcement right now in terms of attracting people to that career field. So I think kind of we initially thought CSOs would be a natural way to get the non-sworn presence closely connected to the police department. But due to the hiring challenges there, last year we started exploring a different set of employees that would be outside of the police department in our bus transportation division that would also be an ATU. And so right now that's under discussion with ATU about creating that personnel. I will say if the legislation that's under consideration now passes, that will influence kind of the shape and structure of that program. And I'll say too, the legislation between the House and Senate is different. In the Senate version, it would require those to be council employees. The House side is silent on that. So I think as to your final question, are we contracting for this or not? I think that's, you know, to be, we'll continue to look at that, but certainly we've envisioned them as council employees and have successfully contracted with community-based organizations for other forms of presence, such as the Mother's Love that was in the video. So certainly that's part of increasing the eyes and ears and interaction on the system too. So,
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Deb, did I say that? Okay, Councilmember Vento.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a great report. I really appreciate it. I want to begin by commending both of you for the presentation you made on public radio about a month or so ago, maybe more than that, I can't remember, but I heard it, and I've talked to so many people who also heard it and were so impressed with the candor with which you spoke and the determination with which you spoke, both of you. On the slides regarding the Group 8 crimes and the top categories of the Group 8 crimes, it's going to sound like a nitpicky question, but in those numbers, is it possible that an individual is being charged for multiple crimes, and so those graphs don't show actually a number of people, but a number of crimes?
Chair? Councilmember. Yes, those are categorized by crimes, specific crimes. But to your question, yes, there are individuals who are charged multiple, and those numbers may be counted, duplicated as well.
Okay.
Right, based on the individual crimes that one individual is charged. So if they're charged 4 or 5 crimes, that will be categorized statistically.
If it's possible for the next quarter to get the number of individuals as well, I'd appreciate knowing that. And I'd also appreciate, as this kind of data becomes available, how we compare to other cities with major transit systems. I've been involved with the conversations regarding the Purple Line, and at a fairly crucial point, questions were raised about, or allegations were made, stories were started that we had the worst transit crime in the nation. And I don't know that to be true, but I don't have any strong basis with which to counter that. And so to the extent that we could have kind of current information about where we stand, I'd appreciate that. I hate to make responses back that don't hold up. Credibility is kind of important in what we're doing. So I'd appreciate that as well. And then I just want to end my remarks by thanking everybody who's here tonight. This demonstrates so much about what a team effort this is. And for those of you who are returning council members and didn't attend the open houses that that both sides of the river had, And for those of you that are new, we'll get invited back for open houses with the police, and I'd encourage you to participate. It's a great opportunity to talk one-on-one or in small groups with folks about the work that they do day in and day out. And I do have one last thing that I almost forgot. Chief Morales, when you talked about the support for the officers and their mental health, I hope that also extends to the families. I have a cousin who was a Minneapolis police officer, and I have never had an opportunity to talk to his wife about it or his daughters, but I would imagine that this takes a toll on families as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So next we have Councilmember Tyrone Carter.
Okay, Chief Morales, it's good to see you again. I had two questions. Within days of being sworn in, I just happened to have the opportunity to ride on the light rail line, and one of your officers were there. I'm not going to mention the name. And one of the things that he reiterated to me was that often, once individuals are arrested and turned over to the police, they're quickly released. So that brought to mind what series of long-term talks, because that is an ongoing problem, allegedly. So what series of ongoing talks do you have with the local police powers that be to try to establish a system of understanding so that you don't duplicate your efforts, because the same person comes back on the train 3 hours later, and that's misusing your resources, and it's causing more fears around safety for the customers on the line. So that kind of struck me because he brought it up more than once, and I wanted to kind of get your response on that. Doesn't have to be today, but at some point. But and then the second one was you mentioned mother's love, and I had heard about that before. So I was trying to crystallize in my mind what's the nature of the interaction, what like on a typical intervention, if you could kind of walk us through that so we can kind of see it for ourselves.
Chair. Councilmember, thank you for the two questions. I'll answer your first question. There is absolutely a frustration with every law enforcement agency, particularly here in the state of Minnesota, where we have repeat offenders. We continuously identify and arrest the same individuals. We turn them over to our local prosecutor's office, where the agenda is not in line with law enforcement agenda. Historically, this is my third department. I've been in law enforcement, as I mentioned earlier today, for 32 years. And we see in every major city that 3% of the population are the recidivist offenders that continuously get re-released, and they wreak havoc within our communities. We must hold these people accountable for their behavior. If they aren't contributing members to society, we have to hold them accountable and stop making excuses for the poor behavior. So, to your question, we collaborate well with our law enforcement partner agencies in regards to other law enforcement police departments. We've identified these individuals. We come in contact with them on a repeated basis. We arrest them over and over again. Until the prosecutors start holding these people accountable, we aren't going to get out of the situation we are experiencing. I can't say it any other way. To answer your second question, yes, we are teaming up with our community partners, such as Mother Love, for one agency, and I'll speak to them. We recently had a operation or a collaboration in the Brooklyn Center Transit Center as a result of complaints we received in the area. So we quickly formalized this collaboration with them. We brought them up there so that they can come in contact with people that are experiencing homelessness, people that are experiencing dependency on chemicals, but also people in the area who needed general services. And they teamed up with A Mother's Love because we use these community partners as liaisons. Not everyone feels comfortable speaking with the police. So by collaborating and getting together with these agencies, they can act as our liaisons. You may not necessarily speak to a police officer, but you speak to a member in one of our community partners that will give you the services that are needed. We can help bridge that relationship and provide the services that are needed within our communities to hopefully come up with long-term pragmatic solutions. I hope that answers your questions.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Pacheco and Councilmember Carter.
Chief and council members. You know, I'd like to hear a little bit more about, maybe from rank and files yourself, as about what we can do to support what you're doing. You know, I made some recommendations in the past, one of them being that we should know at all of our stops, at least with about a 5-block radius, we should know who they are. We should know what we can provide them as far as lighting, as far as awareness, just a hello, something, because, and I guarantee you that if we solve the problem on Lake Street, you better check 38th Street real quick. And so if we built that reputation, we built that connection now with all of our different services, I think we'll go a long way to kind of getting things done over there. And I know the guy who owns that little bar restaurant on 38th in Hiawatha. The other is that I don't know what kind of, I think the other, it's what I guess my point being, we're all neighbors. I don't want to keep referring to everybody as customers, but there are some neighbors there, and we ought to know, we ought to treat them like neighbors. And I think we don't have a strategy or a commitment to do that at this point. I'll raise it again at the next meeting. And then what kind of training is provided, maybe not just for your department, but for all of our departments? I mean, what are we doing, or how do we, I am a customer as a neighbor and as well as a council member. And so there's things I should be looking out for. And I've mentioned them when I've seen things, but all of our employees trained in some way, shape, or form of how security is implemented in their area. I don't care if it's wastewater or anything, it's what do they know, and how do we keep them abreast of what's going on? Because they also are hearing from their family and neighbors that it's not safe, but you know, that may be 5% or even less of the problem, and I don't know what we're doing there. And then finally, I think, I guess the question I have too is what other things can we provide the officers and yourself? I mean, when I came a council member, I got a phone and a laptop. Do they get a laptop? I mean, each one of them? Is there other equipment that they would need that would be able to help them do their jobs in a bit more efficient manner, or even just to get their mind going on some things? So I'd like to hear too down the line, maybe not tonight, from officers, and what are things that we could do to support their work? What are the things that we can provide to support the work? I think that's we're all in this together, because that's, you know, as you know, you always hear about a problem. But I've reported some good things that I've witnessed from officers, but more importantly, just other riders when things are not looking good. But anyway, I think again, this is to everyone's referred to the officers when it's a security, but there's so much more that everybody else to do. And you can't just turn to you and say, why are we doing this? So, and just to commend you and your work and the officers. I did visit about a year ago now, but and I think we do have a great group here, and we just have to make sure we give them the right resources to do their jobs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pacheco. We've had quite a few requests for information. I think that we should be providing that to our council members, and that way it'll be useful for us to do follow-up, to answer questions, and to help with the policy-making decisions. Next we have Councilmember Tony Carter.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Chief Morales. I really appreciate the information that you're bringing forward. I'm looking forward also to the quarterly updates. A lot of what you've shared is information that's new to me. I have some questions with respect to the information I'd like to see also, so I'm going to add to that list. One particular question is about the extent to which a crime that we see on transit, or around transit, is youth crime. I'd really like to see in data what our experience is, and also to ask about the collaborative work that you're doing. I know that you mentioned the work with the community. And I think that's extremely important. Across the region, there are varieties of work that are going on with police, with our county attorneys, with community. And the conversation is about making sure the right hand is knowing what the left hand is doing. Because so often we see the bubble over here and we assume that it is because of something that's happening over there. And so we're really trying in this community to connect the dots. I'd love to know more about how you're connecting with efforts in the cities and the counties. You mentioned knowing as a police community who those repeat offenders are. I would also like to know that we have some investment together with those from whom we expect support in helping to understand what's being done there and helping to guide and direct some of that work. I know you're going to be investing in those relationships. As soon as you are able to share with us your knowledge of what is happening there and how we can impact it more greatly. You know, I think there's some missing pieces because of due process and because of what we know about youth offending in particular that complicate our ability to work together. I'd love us to figure out how to cross over those pathways and do better collaborative work together in this community. We've seen a lot, you know, we've seen a lot of reduced youth crime in years past. And now we're seeing increased youth crime. I'd like to know the extent to which that's impacting us and how we are collaborating as a community across those divisions to ensure that we're able to address this together. I know that's a big question and it doesn't get a quick answer. Okay.
Chair?
Yes.
Council member, if I may, you're absolutely right. I would say that for the most part, at this time of the year, coming out of winter, we don't experience an issue with youthful offenders. However, it is a big problem within the state, especially now as summer kicks in and school lets out, we're going to start experiencing more problems. I will tell you that some of our violent crimes have been contributed to juveniles. So once we arrest them, these are individuals who are involved in shootings, attempted murders, but based on the views of the prosecutor's office, these are individuals that we don't hold accountable for their behavior. And here's the issue, and the long-term issue that I say is my view here. When you deal with a young individual who is stealing cars and driving down roads at 90 miles an hour, bumping into police officers so they can bait them into a chase, then they're armed with firearms, they stop, they rob people in the open, they possibly shoot them. This is an adrenaline high. That's a drug. And once a young individual experiences this adrenaline high, we can never bring them back and recover them. My personal view is we have to hold them accountable, we have to confine them, we have to rehabilitate them before we release them back into society. And understand that a young individual should never be condemned to mistakes they may have made in their young teenage years. But let's rehabilitate them, then let's expunge their record after they have been repaired and put back into society. That's my view, and I think that's a long-term solution, but if we don't address the issue as it now stands, we're failing our young individuals as we return them back into society repeatedly over and over again, because the rush for adrenaline just gets worse. And if I shot one person today, I have to shoot 5 tomorrow to keep me satisfied. This is a societal issue that we need our prosecutors to get on board so that we can protect the silent majority.
I want to say that these are obviously very important issues for us to get under control. And we do have a plan and an approach and a strategy. Chief Morales, I appreciate the information and the feedback also from Chief Lesley Kandaras and Chief of Staff or Interim General Manager, and the police officers. This is as it has been stated many times this evening, an approach that requires partnership and working together. I thought I saw a hand on this side, Councilmember Johnson.
Just briefly, because I really appreciated the comments, and so based on just a couple of the comments I heard too, as far as it goes when we come into the budget, I've said this before, the last time this council received a budget for 2023, there was no mention of public safety or policing. So I know there are things, especially as it relates to officer health and probably the families or all of that, or equipment or training, whatever it might be. I mean, hopefully we're seeing it showing up in the budget and we're hearing about it as we adopt the budget. I have never in my 20-some years of approving a budget for a local unit of government not heard about public safety. That was one of the biggest areas of our budget. Number two, not to answer it now, but you know, the governor, I think maybe, and the legislature has all this money that's coming to local governments for public safety. And I've been asking, does that mean that we might be getting some of it? I don't know. So there's that. And then we've talked about the county attorneys a lot here. And I'm telling you, in the law enforcement community, it's probably nearly unanimous. And so I really appreciate the tone that you take when you talk about that, the serious nature of it. And I'm just wondering, when is the last time any of us here have invited a county attorney in to sit down and have a conversation? I would welcome that. And any county. I just think that building those relationships at our level, and then of course in our leadership team, is super important, because we hear things that they say, they hear things that we say, we might not know what they're up against, I don't know. But I think it would be wise for us, like we've done with our county commissioners, which we should be doing more of that, maybe some of our local units of government, which we kind of individually are doing. But I think in this case, and knowing what our chief is saying, and what a lot of us know, that would be a nice meeting to have. And I think we start with trying to build common ground and build that relationship so that when we have to have hard conversations either way, we've met each other and been introduced.
Good points. I was just at a conference for National Public Administrators last week, and one of the speakers was our Attorney General, and his topic was public safety. Maybe adding him to the list as well. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just really appreciate this discussion and sort of the depth of the conversation. When we first started doing this with the police work group and looking at public safety, which really led to this proactive development of this safety and security action plan, and to see it taken by our chief, our general manager, and Metro Transit Police Department, Metro Transit, to really actually put these things into some actions has been really great to see. Even better is the fact that they, along the way, what we're seeing is people and the different entities looking at it going, this is working, this isn't working, we need to change this, we need to change that, we need to adapt, this works well, we need to communicate to other agencies that this works well. And I hear about it when I'm out in communities, and I think that it's really a different model of doing things. And to steal a word from Councilmember Vento, it takes real candor to do that and to talk about what's really happening. You can't fix anything if you're not going to admit there's a problem. And so the candor and the real courage that we're seeing in these conversations is very impressive, and I think that we're really taking a leading edge on that, and I really just want to relay my thanks to all of you for that.
Thank you. My sentiments exactly. One thing that, in terms of candor, that we heard at the beginning of this presentation was about the vulnerabilities and the need for us to strengthen our organization and our police force and the responsibility for addressing any vulnerabilities that we have, and getting ahead of that and being proactive is very important. Councilmember Jeff.
I just want to comment on your thoughts about the young people today. I said you weren't here, but just within the last 5 years, we've closed Glen Lake, the county homeschool for boys, the totem town for young offenders there, because everyone can be taken care of through counseling. Now, as a resident of the county homeschool for boys for about 1.5 years, different times, I know I needed a timeout. And I know that if I was left out on the street, I'd have been in a little trouble for somebody else or myself. And every now and then, when I would go in, it was a nice, safe place. Everyone was safe, I was safe, people around me were safe. But by the time I turned 18, it was kind of, then it went through my adrenaline time, if you will. But I even talked to the council chair, Chair Lesley here. I said, this is a Metro issue. We should take a look at this because there is no place right now to give somebody a timeout. And even if I have a beef with somebody else, both of us, one of us needs a timeout or something's not going to go well. And I think we just ignored that. There's no accountability. A good friend of mine's an officer, and I work out with him about 3 days a week. But he said that they know there's no accountability. He said, I looked a kid in the face the other night, and he was part of a shooting in a carjacking, and somebody died. And he had this young man looking at him, and he said, you're not going home for a long time. Well, what? He had never been held accountable to that point, but now he'll be doing 5, 10, whatever number of years. And he said, I look at him and I can see this kid just had no concept of responsibility at that point. So anyway, I think that's going to be something that we're going to be talking, whether it's the prosecutor, whether it's the counties, whether it's us. Somebody's going to have to take a look at what we're doing to give somebody some accountability. And I was through that time. That was over 50 years ago, but I remember it. Anyway, that's it.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll just end on a positive note, which is ridership is coming back. 21% increase this quarter from last year. So that's fantastic. I found the 61 on the way here. It was standing room only, which is great. And I see that more and more. So good job.
Thank you. One more question before we go
Last
on.
time, I just want to say again, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're bringing that New York spirit. And I know you're going to do the job well. And it's going to be up, up, up. Thank you.
Thank you. Now moving on to our next presenters. Oh, go ahead, Chief Morales.
Still have one more slide before I hand it over to our next presenter. And I just wanted to talk about our supplemental security. We have identified 6 locations that have been historically our problematic locations. And those are Lake Street, Midtown, Franklin Avenue, Chicago Lake, Uptown, Brooklyn Center Transit Center, and Central Station Vertical Circulation Building, also known as VCB in St. Paul. We've recently contracted with a security company, and we hope to have that roll out in earliest of June next month. And we'll slowly implement that out into these problematic areas so that we can effectively relieve our offices of posted areas and just have them utilize and answer calls for service. So we're optimistic about where this can go, the approach that we're taking. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Pam Shefflin. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you so much, Chief. Good afternoon, Chair, council members. Love coming here. As you guys know, I'm super enthusiastic about it. So it's good to see you guys again, and finally it's spring. So with kind of the inception of supplemental security, one of the 3 work areas within the Safety and Security Action Plan is about engaging customers and partners. And Councilmember Pacheco, you had mentioned about, there are more than customers, there are residents, there are businesses. And that's really what I'm here to talk about today. So we have these 6 sites where we're going to receive supplemental security. Plus we have some other sites that, like the airport, I-35W and Lake Street, Mall of America, and some other sites that need extra attention, and we have a joint powers agreement with those local enforcement agencies. But what we are in the process of doing is we are developing community relations plans for each of these sites, plus additional ones where we are convening work groups, if you will, of Metro Transit stakeholders along with external stakeholders. I can give you a great example of, we're off actually to a really great start. at our Lake Street Midtown Station, where we've already had a couple meetings with the city, with Wellington Management Group, with, let's see here, the YWCA, Minneapolis Schools, Minneapolis Adult Basic Education, Corcoran Neighborhood Association, MPD is at the table. We have Touch Outreach at the table, Minneapolis Transgender Council at the table. So I'm listing off a whole host of people that we've started this discussion, which is happening every Friday morning at 8 a.m. where we're really talking about the challenges that we have, but more so when we bring on board the supplemental security, we know, because we've seen it again and again, where our police department is in one of the Lake Street LRT towers, and we're pushing out folks out to the different bus shelters or out to the businesses. We want to be in partnership with those around us to work together to manage, you know, what we're doing and where folks should go once we're pushing them out into the system. That's something we've seen all along, and that's what we're going to work for. So we really are going to have community engagement plans for each of these sites, and to really hone in on who are our external stakeholders along with our internal stakeholders, and really develop these relationships with them so we can work together on really helping the challenges at each of these sites. So I really, really wanted to say I'm super excited about that. And again, we're beginning with the Lake Street LRT station. So I'm super excited about that. Trying to see what else I was going to say. Oh, I wanted to also talk about, you know, this isn't kind of the first time that we're engaging community and partners and stuff. So the mention of 38th Street and the restaurant there, I've been in contact with the policy aid of City Council. We put in a porta potty at that location because that business owner was having some challenges from the station. And so far, so good. We've checked in with them. They're super pleased with the implementation of the porta potty. It's really helped his business. And then 46th Street Station, we have a relationship there with an adjacent homeowner in the cul-de-sac. Very soon, we're going to be meeting there again with him to strategize and figure out how we can help with the kind of non-transit riders kind of filtering around in his neighborhood. And it's not just Metro Transit. We're bringing the city to the table, Public Works, also MPD. So we really started some really good things where we're just taking it one step at a time, one site at a time, where it's not just about Metro Transit, it's the whole community and working towards that. So I just wanted to let you know that, and we'll have further updates as we convene these quarterly meetings. So thank you so much.
Chair and members of the committee, my name is Kerr. I am the Senior Manager of Communications at Metro Transit. I've been here now for almost 10 years. When I started here 10 years ago, we were certainly aware of public safety, but it was not the full-time job. And today it is almost the full-time job that we have in communications, is to talk about public safety. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing in that regard. Two different audiences, but very important in their own rights. The internal audience, probably the most important audience, I think. The folks who work here every single day, live it and breathe it, our operators, police officers, and so on. And then the external audience. How do we present ourselves to the folks who aren't in the thick of it, but are interested in riding transit, and of course our riders as well. So as Lesley shared at the top of the presentation, we started the Safety and Security Action Plan by going out to our staff and asking them for some of their ideas and bringing some of the ideas that we had to them and saying, does this resonate with you? What are the things that you think we should be doing? That feedback was very important in the development of the plan, and therefore we think it's very important that they know how the plan is progressing and they have the opportunity to tell us if there are things that aren't in there that should be in there. That's part of what we've been doing over the last year and will continue to do as we move forward. How are we doing that? How are we letting staff know what we're doing, and how are we giving them those opportunities to provide feedback? Again, we're talking about this all the time, every single day. A couple of things that I'll highlight. Coffee with Cops, very popular program. Cops will come to each of our facilities. Most recently, this was East Metro here in St. Paul earlier this in April. They have a really captive audience, people with a lot of questions. You see a hand raised there in the corner. The events are scheduled for 8:30 or 10:30 to 12:30, and they'll often go longer. So a couple of hours isn't enough to satisfy the interest that the operators and other staff have in what our officers are doing. This is a great way to build understanding and answer questions and build visibility of the Safety and Security Action Plan. We have a Transit Safety and Security Committee that meets every month. We are coming to that group every single month and letting them know, here are some of the things that we're working on right now. And hearing from them, what are the things that they are seeing in their work that they think need to be addressed. And so all of the things that we've talked about today would not be news to them. Managers meetings. You rely on our managers and supervisors who are having the regular and day-to-day interactions with our operators to be really experts in this area. And so we are giving them the information that they can then share with their staffs and their teams through monthly managers meetings. And we'll do another one of those next week. And of course, we do communicate with our folks through all the other traditional means that you would imagine. Weekly newsletters, digital signage that's out there at the garages, out there on the tables, the one-pager that we'll use when we go out and talk to staff about these things. I'll say out of all the things that we do, the most impactful probably is just going out and talking to people. Again, those Coffee with Cops, or as you see on the top left there, when we were at Brooklyn Center Transit Center last month, we were not only talking to customers, but we were talking to our operators. Our operators have a break room there, and they have a little bit of time between trips where we can grab them and tell them a little bit more about what we're doing. So going to continue to try to find those opportunities. On the external front, of course, we all see the news, and what do the news like to cover? I'm a former reporter, I'll admit it. I didn't, a good news story was not as fun as the other kind, and so that's kind of what we deal with. But we are having success, I believe, in getting some of those good news stories out there. You mentioned ridership being an example of that. We've had other examples of that. WCCO was at that BCTC event and spoke to, she's still here, Sergeant Rodriguez here, about all of the great work that she and the Homeless Action Team have done, continuing to do, and with the Mother's Love. And so we are nurturing those relationships with the news media, and we know that that's an important audience. And of course, we tell our own story. We tell our own story through social media, through our website. Examples of that would be just one recent example. On the lower right here, we have the Adopt a Stop program that Pam and her group initiated, and the Equity and Inclusion team were nice enough to adopt a stop up in North Minneapolis. So catching people doing good work and sharing that good work is something that we're going to continue to do to try to disrupt this narrative that the only thing that's happening on transit is our poor behavior and things that we need to, challenges that we need to address. But of course, we want to acknowledge those challenges too. So again, if you were to visit our website, you'd see updated with even this most recent quarterly update, that website that has all of the things that we're doing, status updates real quick and easy. So that's a good place to send people to. And if you think there are other things that you need, for example, you mentioned, do we have the most dangerous light rail system in the country? I can give you an answer to that. The answer is nuanced, I'll say. It's not a yes or no, but there is an answer to that we can give. And if you need information that can be helpful in those kinds of conversations, certainly do come to us for that.
Okay. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. This is great, and I remember when you were a reporter too, so glad you're on Team Metro Transit. I would say a couple of things. The more talking points and information you can give the council, especially the newer ones, and I still consider myself newer, I'm just starting my second term, the better, especially when news is coming out, so that we've got some backstory on it. That would be helpful. Two things. So that Ward 9 meeting that you've got a photo up there, I was actually watching that on Twitter that night and found that very interesting. So do you notify council members whose districts these meetings are in to invite them to come into their district to be part of this? And I'm going to say this in two ways. And I think maybe it could be expanded to all council members, because I represent District 1, and we just have none of this going on up in my neck of the woods, but I vote on things here, and I really, even just seeing that Twitter feed that one of the advocates was putting out was really good for me. And the second part of that is, when it comes to the council, we have some time on our agendas at meetings to talk about things that are not on the agenda. Most of the testimony and things goes before the committees here, but we don't really have a public safety committee, although we do have transportation, and I know you guys talk about this a lot. But I think it's that authentic community discussion that would really help us to just sit and listen and hear. You know, we hear about what things are happening, but, you know, to be part of it, maybe we should all adopt a stop or something as a group, I don't know. But that would be helpful to me, because I'm not used to that as a council member. I got invited to all kinds of community meetings where there was a lot of tension around something and we worked to resolve it, and it made me a better decision maker. And I feel like I'm lacking that a little bit in this arena, but maybe it's me because I'm kind of out of the circle. And that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of things. First of all, I think Wendy and I don't like being called the old council members, so we have to address that.
I wear it with pride.
And you do. Secondly, one thing I did during my first term, because I also live in the more suburban area, is worked with our community relations people to go out and ride in one day rode all modes of transit. And just to get a feel for it, because I rode light rail and I rode some of the express routes, but I didn't ride local routes just by where I lived. And doing some of that, you get a feeling for what the operators are seeing, what the police are seeing, what happens to make things run on a daily basis. And I encourage everybody to go do that. You know, we can work with Sam O'Connell to figure out routes to go and things like that, because it's a great experience, because we all use the system differently, and it's good to kind of know what we're talking about. And then I just want to say thanks to both of you. I think it's really important that we have this outreach with community, because, like you said, we can maybe get everything all taken care of along all the light rail platforms, but there's still a community systemic problem that will get displaced out into the communities. So the more we're talking about all of that, it helps us become part of the solution, not something that's contributing to a different problem. And so just thank you and appreciate the update on that.
Councilmember Tony Kerr.
Thank you also again. At the very beginning of this meeting, we saw the video that seemed to be pretty quick and well put together. And I know it's likely on our site and up on Facebook and social media that we run. I'm wondering if we place that at all. And I don't know if it's short enough that it could be, but it seems to be a very, very easy to watch, you know, and understand presentation. Are there possibilities for placing that or other things that, you know, can help as we look toward changing this narrative and actually seeing a different response from community and writers and others who are non-writers?
Yeah, Chair and Council Member, you set me up to talk a little bit about the thing I wanted to and forgot to, and that's
lovely.
That as an institution, of course, we talk about this again all of the time, but hearing from an institution is different than hearing from an individual. So yes, we will, of course, use every channel at our disposal, but we have channels right here around this table that are as important and probably more effective than anything we'll ever be able to do. And so please do share. And please do think of other ways that you can personalize this work. So not only the things that we're creating, but if you are outriding the system, as the Councilmember Barber described here, turn that camera around and take a picture and put it on the internet and share it with your friends and tell them to write it too. That kind of thing goes a long, long way in whatever way you're comfortable doing. Of course, I don't mean to suggest that we're all comfortable in that space, but if you are, please share your story and encourage the people around you to do so as well.
Just to follow up on that, I think that's an excellent idea. We'll all, I'm sure, take advantage of the opportunity to do that and encourage our friends and neighbors. I wonder if there is any possibility that you're thinking of things like plugs for our system sounded like a Pandora ad, if you ask me. And I wonder if there are any of those kinds of things that may be coming up already happening or in consideration.
Yes, Chair, council members, our marketing department does do an annual campaign and an ongoing campaign. Of course, over the last few years, the emphasis has been on hiring. And so we seem to have sort of turned a corner on hiring. And so maybe there is opportunity, not maybe, there is, and to have marketing play a larger role in sharing this message. They have a budget. I don't have a budget. I have a budget, but it's a small one. It's me, basically, and my team.
Ask for more.
But marketing has resources that we can utilize and does so. We have our own assets, of course. That's a relatively low-cost initiative. But they have in the past used, people go to the movies, those advertisements before you see a movie, NPR, all of the outlets, and of course online. News outlets and so on. So.
Well, thanks for your engagement. Clearly, more than messages are needed. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Johnson.
And just briefly, so if you're on LinkedIn, follow everybody and start sharing and posting something on top of it that kind of amplifies, because we've had people getting awards, we had a national conference here, we've got, all the good things. They're already out there. We just need to share it, like it, all those. So we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, my favorite, we're Facebook, and we're on Instagram too. Those any others? Did I miss any? Are we TikToking yet?
All of the above.
So I'm not doing all of those.
We may subtract before we add. TikTok is not a space that we've inhabited.
Yeah.
And we've certainly talked about it. There are reasons for and against, and so far the against has taken favor.
And the only thing I say is, if you're on those platforms, or if you aren't, as a council member, when you are sharing it or liking it, it has more weight, because we're the council, and I would only hope that the people that are being recognized, you can add a note of congratulations in there, and tag people, and so it's just a small way. But when you've got 5 or 10 minutes of time, you just get on there and do some things. And I could be better at it, but I'm out there. And then other people in your circle are seeing what you're doing.
Councilmember Tyrone Carter.
Yeah, I had a question. I remember recently we went up and they did our video interviews, which were great. But to me, it would be more real if I was actually on a line. Like, probably everybody has a favorite line. I like light rail because I grew up in the trolley system in Philadelphia. And it was all, they had buses, they had trolleys, they had elevated trains, subways, but I just love the trolleys with, probably first cousin is the light rail system, right? So I would think that, I know our team has enough things to do. They don't need another list, but at some point it'd be great to you could interview us maybe separately, but actually on riding, with a direct connection, riding on the transportation. I mean, that's really the biggest part of what we do, and it'd be great to do that, and then you could talk about it.
Chair and council member, this is, again, you've set me up well. The meeting I had right before coming over to St. Paul was about exactly that idea. We have for a while now featured our own staff in a series we call How We Roll, and the most recent example was somebody who works in our real-time information center, walks to and from the 38th Street station, personalizes for him the work that he does at the real-time information center, because he is a Blue Line rider himself. And so when we shared that story, people grabbed onto that and said, thank you for being so watchful and attentive. And if we can include you in that group, let's do that, because I think
I'm sure Councilmember Pacheco would be
like the company.
Yeah, because he rides a lot too. So.
And Lindstrom.
Indeed, count me in.
You'll be hearing from us.
Great, any other questions? Don't see any. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, nice job.
Is there any further business we would want to discuss? Councilmember Vento.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I should have let you know this before I'm gonna do this, but since we've been talking about safety and also talking about the whole idea of consequences, I wanted to make a pitch for the annual Ramsey County Workhouse Plant Sale. It started last week. I didn't get there due to a crazy schedule, but it is a fabulous way to support the workhouse at the corner of Century and Lower Afton Road in very, very South Maplewood, south of 3M, between Century and McKnight. Fabulous plants, succulents, herbs, flats, pots, hanging plants, you name it, they've got it. It's great stuff. 25% of your purchase is tax deductible. They give you the receipt so that you've got it for your tax records. I can't praise the program enough. I've been going there for years. And I don't remember the exact year, but a few years before COVID hit, I was there one day and a young man was helping me load up my plants and get them to my car. He was a resident there at the time, and I was asking about, you know, whether he enjoyed this or not, and he said it's the best part about being here. I feel like I'm learning something that I can take with me. And as I was thanking him, I said, well, I'll be back next week. I get kind of addicted to this. After winters like we have in Minnesota, Mr. Chief, you're going to learn this the hard way. Digging in the dirt is great. And he said to me, oh, I won't be here next week. I get out on Tuesday. And I'm not coming back. So I just want to make a really strong pitch for it. It will run until May 25th. They're open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the volunteers in corrections coordinate a lot of the work, and I can't praise it enough. So please consider it if you want a great deal on some beautiful plants.
There we go.
Thank you, Sue Bento. That is a great way and refreshing way to end our meeting. Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.